liftoff, 32 minutes past the hour.
50 years ago tonight, the whole world paused to watch history. Man on the moon.
That's one small step for man.
What was once thought to be the impossible became a giant leap for mankind.
Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed.
2 astronauts and their historic steps officially ending the space race.
Wally, say something. I'm speechless.
Speechless. The perfect words to describe what millions of people felt that night 50 years ago.
Yeah, that moment forever changed the world as we knew it. CBS 12's Jay O'Brien spoke with 2 local men who had a hand in that transformative mission. He joins us now with their story. Jay?
Listen, Jim, these are the kind of history-altering figures that we rarely hear from. The men and women who worked day in and day out to propel names like Armstrong, Aldrin, and Collins to the moon and into history. We met 2 who might be your neighbors.
Altitude 4200. Houston, you're a go for landing, over.
Those final seconds as man first approached the moon.
We're go, same type, we're go.
Astronauts readied their first steps onto the unknown.
Nobody knew what the lunar surface was like.
You got a bunch of guys about to turn blue. We're breathing again.
And breathless engineers like Ron Gomes waited back home for word of their success.
Did you just pray that it would work, though?
A lot of Hail Marys. The minute it touched the surface, lit a light on those control panels that said, Luna, contact.
You knew just what he was looking at.
Yep. Yeah.
Gomes, then a 34-year-old working for NASA on loan from the aerospace company Grumman, helped design the control panel in the lunar module.
These 2 are your attitude indicators.
You still remember how it works all these years ago.
Yep.
He started on what was then a far from finished lunar module project in Long Island, New York. Soon transferred to Cape Canaveral to oversee tests of the module called LM or LIM, better known as Eagle, on Apollo 11.
Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed.
It was exciting to think that someone was going to land on the moon and drive it with this panel. You know, it seemed like an impossible task, but we did it.
Neil Armstrong commented to us, he said, the lunar module looked like a turkey, but it flew like an eagle.
Peter Meyer was also on loan to NASA. At 25, he headed a Grumman team working 24/7 on the module's descent stage, seen here allowing the module's 4 wide legs to slowly drift to the surface of the moon for the first time.
Picking up some dust.
The automatic computer had the spacecraft off course, headed for a landing in a crater from which they'd likely never get out of. The 2 made a last-minute course correction with dwindling fuel that saved their lives and the mission.
Contact light. Okay, engine stop. We copy you down, Eagle.
Armstrong had to do some maneuvering because he was seeing things down there that he didn't want to land on.
Right.
So,
and he's using your system.
Using our system, yeah.
How'd that feel?
Well,
Did you breathe a sigh of relief when they landed on the moon safely?
more so when they came off and reunited with the command service module.
So this is mostly your work?
Yes.
Pete's engineering mainly focuses on his home in Stewart now, the moon in his rear view.
I heard guys sign their names and put it in a descent stage, and it's sitting there.
We had a big plaque. The team all signed their names on the plaque, and they microfilmed that down to a postage stamp, and we put it in the descent stage. So I tell my grandkids, my name is up there on the moon, my signature.
Ron Gomes' name is there too. He and his wife Connie, now in Jupiter, have saved certificates and preserved mementos for their 5 grandkids and 2 great-grandkids.
R.J. Gomes. It's almost faded. It's almost faded away. Where do you keep this?
It's in a box. All of these things are in a box.
Did you think when you were a kid growing up in New York you'd get something like this?
No.
Is proud the right word?
Proud, yes. Proud of the country, proud of the company.
You weren't proud of yourself?
Well, sure I was a little bit. Sure I was.
Both Ron and Peter will tell you they were only a small part of a large national effort to put a man on the moon. According to NASA, about 300,000 people across the country worked in some form in the Apollo program. in Jupiter looking at the moon. I'm Jay O'Brien, CBS 12 News.
It is a beautiful sight. How incredible to be part of history like that. I mean, so hands-on.
Yeah, and many Americans remember exactly where they were when they watched that. I remember my family, we all gathered around in the living room on a little black and white TV.
Us too.
I knew it was exciting and important, but I probably didn't realize the significance then.
Not yet.
Too young.
Well, 50 years ago, at this moment, CBS News was on the air covering the moon landing for 32 hours straight. Nearly half of the country's 57 million TVs were tuned in to CBS, watching Walter Cronkite cover the historic moment. And you can see him right there holding up a New York Times newspaper with the headline, "Men Land on Moon." And you might recognize this paper, the Fort Lauderdale News. That was the name of the Sun Sentinel back in 1969. This was the front page of the paper the day after the moon landing. The headline, "A Giant Leap, Man Romps on the Moon."
I like that, romps on the moon. Well, today the president marked the anniversary by welcoming former astronaut and pilot of that mission, Buzz Aldrin, to the White House. They gathered in the Oval Office where the president spoke of plans to get astronauts back on the moon by the year 2024. Tomorrow, Vice President Mike Pence is set to visit Kennedy Space Center. He's going to be visiting the original Apollo launch site. And in Washington, D.C., take a look at this awesome picture. This is the Smithsonian National Air and Space Museum projecting the Apollo rocket's image onto the Washington Monument. It is an amazing sight.